Hi, Aleta.
Hi.
Well, here we are at the almost opening of your solo exhibition, Landscapes of the Mind. And I'd like to ask you to do a walkthrough and talk about the show, what it means to you, and what it was like creating the show.
Okay. So most of these are oils. And Landscapes of the Mind for me, I grew up in the desert of Southern California. I love the desert. I love the vastness, the sparseness, and yet the beauty that exists there. And I think it's the contrast that is so stark, and yet there's this contrast of like when the cactus blooms and the beautiful sunsets, the richness of the blue sky, and so you appreciate that. And so some of them are meant to look almost like landscapes, and others of them are the emotional side of things. Our landscapes of the mind can also be our perceptions that have caused us to become who we are, and the decisions we've made in our lives, our dreams that we've given up, or the dreams we've pursued and succeeded at. And then of course everything, and that's another contrast, as you succeed at something, your desire for something else is shown to you, and then you move towards that.
Yeah.
But anyway, this one, this is very much the desert I grew up in. This is very stark. I grew up in India, which is by Palm Springs, and a lot of the mountains there are very rugged, with little vegetation on them, particularly around La Quinta, and in that area. But the colors are so dynamic because they're reflective. The rocks, they reflect as the sunset in different times of day, so I like that.
Wow. Yeah.
And these are oils.
Are they all reflective of the desert?
No, this one, I call it Caribbean Rhapsody because it might have the colors of the desert, but I also my husband and I used to scuba dive a lot and go to different places in the Caribbean, and it feels like that, the magic of all the color and the flower, the vegetation, and even the birds.
Mm-hmm.
This one would feel like the desert a little bit, or northern California, because you almost can imagine that this color is mist or fog coming in over the mountains and dropping down.
Yeah, we have a lot of people having a very emotional response to this piece particularly. It's very ethereal. And how about
obviously I love color.
Yes.
This painting actually there's a lot of thick paint on this, and so it evolved over time, and I've gotten where I lived with it in my studio, and I've gotten where I really just love this painting. I love the energy, movement, and color in it.
Mm-hmm. So this one was probably pretty exciting to create.
It was, and all of my paintings, I use palette knife. And when you look at this, there's lots of texture and color, and maybe it's because we have this more neutral background. It feels light and airy to me, and yet there's still a lot going on with it.
Right, but it still breathes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you've got a few pieces behind you.
Right, this one, I love the darks and lights, the contrast. I call this traveling through time because it feels a little bit like space.
Mm-hmm.
And traveling through time can be about space. It can also be actually our lives as we travel through time, which I'm appreciating more now as I'm getting older. I'm appreciating every day.
It just makes art more meaningful.
Right.
And this has some palette knife in it too?
They're all palette knife. These marks are created with oil sticks. And then I decided I wanted some energy on the top, so I slung some color on it.
Yeah, still very energetic work. And then this piece here.
This to me feels like a garden. I call it Winter's Blessing because this year in Santa Fe we had a rather long winter. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was just long and we were ready for it to be done. But because of all the moisture, our gardens are quite luscious this year. And that's why I call it Winter's Blessing, because that's what happens with all the little seeds, and all that moisture.
Yes.
Spring comes and
Yes, and it makes you grateful for all the times you were snowed in.
that's right.
And there's also a second room of the exhibition.
Yes. I started doing the circles last year, and so we have some of those. These two paintings over here are, this one on the right is harkens back to some work I was doing a few years ago, and I'm revisiting that now, and I really like what happened with this piece.
Yeah, people are really seeing all kinds of things in this piece.
What I like about it, I like the contrast of light and dark, but I like these areas here that have receded now.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you. Bye. Yes. Bye.
All right, and then there's this one.
This one, I wanted to do something that looked like flowers. And this is as close as I get to representation now. But this one has a lot of oil. This is done with oil, palette knife. There's lots and lots of layers on this. And I absolutely love the way the colors turned out. And this was painted over another painting. And so when I started painting this, my intention at first was to cover this up.
Right.
But then I thought, oh, that's so interesting because of allowing the other painting to come through in these various places. There's gives a lot of dimensional quality to it. So there's a lot of depth.
Yeah, I'm so glad you left all that layering in the older painting, remnants of the older painting.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And finally,
This one's perpetual motion. I had a painting 5 or 6 years ago now. It was called Perpetual Motion, and my gallery director then, Julia, that's what she called me, Our Lady of Perpetual Motion.
oh my God, it's your next title for your next show.
because I'm constantly changing my paintings. I'm constantly in motion. I'm doing something.
I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
Again, this one was also painted over another painting. I love doing that because I like that history and that buildup of color that's occurring. And sometimes I allow it to show through. There's different places in here where you can see some of it. But I just love the amount of texture that starts to happen with this. Again, painted with a palette knife. For me, it kind of reminds me of gardens again.
Yeah. Yeah, there is this sort of wispy vegetational energy about it. And then you have like one red anomaly right there. It's very exciting, this painting.
And I've forgotten that, but I always used to have a spot of red in all my work somewhere. Even if it was just a little spot of red. And I've kind of moved away from that now, but that used to be a signature.
Oh, I guess old habits die hard.
In this one.
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Aleta's show opens this Friday, 5 to 7 at Pippin Contemporary. We hope to see you at the show, Landscapes of the Mind. Bye.
Thank you.